Okay, I'm just going to go over these questions with you all. So what two numbers add to give -2 and multiply to give -48? So the key to this is, so first of all, let's just be clear on what we're trying to do. We want to find two numbers where when we multiply them together, whatever they are, they give us -48. And I'm just going to, sorry, just going to make that a little bit bigger. There we go. And when we add these two numbers, whatever they are, the answer will be -2. All right. So that's what we're trying to do. So let's just be clear on that first of all. Now, you can just kind of look at it and kind of guess, and that's fine. I guess a strategy or a procedure would be to look at, okay, they've got to multiply to -48. So what would be pairs of factors of 48, right? And you can go through methodically 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times what? 16, and so on. 4 times what? A little bit of a difficult one, this actually. These questions aren't always this messy, but 4 times, 12. And 5 doesn't go in there because it's not a multiple of 5, but 6 times what gives 48, right? So can anyone think of that? Press pause on the video at any point if you want to do this yourself, by the way. Please press pause and try it yourself and then skip the video ahead and check. But 6 times 8 gives 48. And we can use, so one of these pairs is gonna help us figure this out. So what two numbers multiply to -48? Remember, they got to multiply to -48 and they got to add to -2. Now just looking at the multiplication part, if two numbers multiply to a negative, what should the signs of the two numbers be? Right? So shouldn't one be a positive and one be a negative, right? And so we know that much. The positive times the negative gives a negative, right? And so, and if you look at 6 and 8, they have a difference of 2, right? So maybe that's going to help us, right? So you can try different things, but so you could say, okay, it's 6 and 8. Like, so should it be -6 and -8, or should it be +6 and -8? Or should it be a -6 and a +8? Because these are all different, right? They're not all going to work. Because if you multiply these two, you get a +48, so that can't work. These multiply to -48, 6 and -8. And by the way, if you add them, you get -2. So 6 and -8 is correct. And notice that this is not correct, because if I multiply them, I get -48. But if I add them, I get +2. So not this. So it's got to be +6 and -8. +6 and -8, right? And so 34. Go ahead and press pause on the video and try to do 34 all by yourself. Okay, I'll help you now. So we're looking for two numbers that when we multiply them, we get -100. And when we add them, we get 0. So two magic numbers: multiply to -100, add to 0. And tip is to list pairs of factors of 100. So give me two numbers and multiply to 100, right? So you might just look at that and go, hey, it's 10 times 10, and you'd be correct. I mean, 2 times 50 also are a pair of factors, or 4 times 25, right? And so and 1 times 100, and so on. But what do you think of 10 times 10? Can you use tens to figure this out? See if you can figure it out with 10 and 10, right? So press pause on the video and try to do it yourself. Okay, I'll do it now. So the two numbers multiply to a negative again, so that means one must be positive, one must be negative. And they add to 0. So what about like a +10 and a -10, right? They add to 0, and then when I multiply them, +10 times -10, I get negative 100, right? And again, not everything's going to work. Like a negative 10 and a negative 10, they would multiply to positive 100 and they would add to negative 20. So that doesn't work, right? So you've got to be careful. It's not like you got to be very specific. Okay. So this question, what two numbers will add to give negative 3 and multiply to give negative 54? So they add to give 3 and they multiply to give negative 54. So press pause on the video and do this one yourself, and then I'll do it. Okay, I hope you've pressed pause and tried it. So again, one of the strategies is to think of two numbers that multiply to just 54. Forget about the negatives for now. Like, what two numbers multiply to 54, right? So you can go down through a list like 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times, and so on. Might be a little simpler than that, but 3 times 3 into 5 goes once, and 2 over, and 3 into 24 goes 8 times, so like 18, and so on. But you might, if you just on regular times tables, what about 6 times what? 6 times what gives 54? 6 times 9, right? And these numbers add to 3 and they multiply to 54. What, out of these pairs, what numbers have a difference of 3 between them, right? So 6 and 9. So just based on that, that's your hint. Use 6 and 9, press pause on the video and do it yourself. Okay, I'll do it now. So what we're going to do is think that the numbers must multiply to give a negative. They multiply to give a negative. So if they multiply to give a negative, that means one of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive, right? So that's helpful as well. So you could think, well, negative 6, positive 9, but you could also think about, okay, what about positive 6, negative 9? Is that going to work? Or what about negative 6, negative 9? Is that going to work? Right? So it's not like any old thing. You got to be very specific. It's only one specific pair of numbers is going to work for this, right? So, for example, the positive 6 and the negative 9, multiply them, you get negative 54. But if you add them, you get negative 3, not positive 3, because that's a positive 3, right? That's a positive 3, and that's a negative 54, right? So, and negative 6 and negative 9 doesn't work, because when I multiply them, I get positive 54. In fact, when I add them, I get negative 15. So that's why it must be this pair here, the negative 6 and the positive 9. They add to give positive 3. They multiply to give negative 54, right? Negative 6, positive 9. They add to give positive 3. Negative 6, positive 9. Multiply to give negative 54.